Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this morning. We are so excited to welcome you to our second installment with David this morning. David Phillips is a world traveler. He's going to take us to different places every month. And today we are going to Germany with David. So I won't spoil it for you guys. I'll let David tell his trip to Germany that he's had because I would not know. I wasn't there. I'm just as excited as you guys to take part in this. So remember, if anybody's got any questions, go ahead and type them in that chat box. I'll be monitoring it. We also will have a Q&A at the end if anybody's got any questions. And if you're watching this on record, then you have any questions while you're watching the recording, you can reach out to me by email at sarahc@unisonalberta.com. And I'm going to give it to David. Take us away to Germany, David. Yay!
Okay, Sarah. I thought that today I would start off by taking you to a corner of Germany that is almost unknown to most people and is I'm just going to share my screen perhaps so we start uh, going. Come on, where's my you haven't got the shared thing yet. Okay.
There we go.
Now we're gonna get there.
Now
Uh,
we're cooking with oil.
okay, I will start. Come on, let's slideshow. That's what I need to click up here. You get it already, and then you seem to fumble at the beginning. Anyway.
It's
But
Murphy's Law, David.
yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go to a part of Germany that even Germans, very few Germans have seen. It's up in um, the German Frisian Islands is where we're going to start. These are a string of islands. There's 7 inhabited islands that are off the northeast coast of Germany, and they basically protect the northeast corner from the storms of the North Sea. There, these islands are learned, the names of these islands are learned by every German student at school by rote, but they will probably never see them and never go there. Borkum, Juist, Norderney, Boltram, Langegoog, Speakeroo, and Wangeroo. Those are the ones, and we were traveling up from France, and we were trying to get to Denmark, and we were in our boat, and we'd chosen to travel across the Netherlands by the inland waterways. But we came out of the Netherlands about here, and that's where it all started. I'll just go back a minute. This where it is where it all started because we'd been traveling inland and suddenly we went out through a lock gate and our world sort of changed. Because once you're in the sea, your life is totally governed by the tidal cycle and the moon and the currents and the depths of the charts. You've got to think about them all the time. And if you don't uh, uh, play by the rules of the game, you can be very dangerous. This becomes the master that you can't defy the winds and the tides and so on. But over the years, as you go through this process, that master can be your friend if you work with it. You work with the tides and the currents. So that's what was on our minds as we crept out in the middle of the night and the dark at 4 a.m. We came out through these lock gates and were concentrated on the navigation because it was a kaleidoscope of flashing lights, and there was lots of traffic coming down this river, going out to sea on the ebb tide. So we had to slip out in the darkness, pick out the right light, and insert ourselves into the traffic line. A little bit like entering a freeway from a ramp. And you get a huge satisfaction for that when the first green buoy slides by your starboard side and you think, I've got it right. It's tremendous satisfaction. Anyway, we sailed up we were heading for the island of Borkum in here, and there's a little harbor in here. And we figured there'd just be enough water for us to slide up the entrance to get in. And that's how it was. But I should divert a little bit here before I start going on this journey down the islands to fill in a little bit of background if you're not familiar with this my story. When in 2003, my wife and I decided that we couldn't put off retirement any longer. We had to do something, but we'd had a couple of financial disasters in our life and we were in not good shape at all for entering retirement. So the prospect of a sort of genteel poverty and scraping by for the next 30 years or something appalled us. So we said, we'll take what we've got and we'll buy a boat. An old boat was all we could afford, and we will live on it, travel on each year to new adventures, follow the sun, live cheaply on local produce, and that was going to be our retirement. And we did. We bought a boat in the Netherlands and then worked like dogs to do it up. And it was the greatest thing we ever did. It was a fabulous retirement.
I
Uh,
love that, David. I think that that's so amazing because you guys have three children, right?
for
Four children. Okay, excuse me. Um, yeah, it's amazing that you instead of most people and myself included, I feel like I want to relax for my retirement. Like I'm saving up so that I can just be comfortable and cozy. You guys bought an old boat, fixed it up, and then traveled the world. And I love that. That's so inspirational.
Okay. Well, yeah, okay. Now a little bit of a geography lesson because just to situate things right, the western coast of Europe has been formed over the years by seven great rivers, and you see them here. The Scheldt. Oh, wait a minute! I knocked the thing. The Scheldt, the the Maas, which is known as the Meuse in France. The Rhine River comes out here. And then there's the Ems and the Jade and the Weser and the Elbe. And they were huge rivers at the time of the last ice age. And they created like a huge delta off the coast of Europe. And it was a place of shifting sandbanks and so on. This is what it looks like at low tide. But over the centuries, dikes were formed and land reclaimed. So the coastline crept westward with this hard boundary of dikes and the agricultural land behind. But that world of shifting sandbanks is still there. It's outside the hard coastline of dikes, and it's called the Waddenzee. And it's a huge, come on, it's a huge area that stretches. Your pictures are covering up part of can you see the whole map, or have
Ye-
you the pictures in the way?
So we see the whole map. We see the North Sea. I can see Germany,
Okay.
Netherlands. Yeah.
I was just for me, it just blocks it a bit. But it stretches from way down here at the lower end of the Netherlands, right along Germany and up Denmark to there. And the area is the World Heritage Site that's been declared because it's such a magical wildlife place. And but it's difficult to get to. It's remote, so it's although it's the largest World Heritage Site in the world, actually few people have seen it. Yeah, it's all protected by the string of islands, and these German Frisian islands we were talking about, you can see here all along here on this part of the coast. Uh, Inside them is all these drying sandbanks that you're seeing in brown. The blue is deep water, and outside them, there's a white area, which is also shifting sandbanks, but a little bit deeper. So we were forced, our boat's not really suited to go on the inside, but so we had to go on the outside and pop in from the outside because we couldn't afford to dry out and tip over on the inside. It's a fascinating place because on a misty day, you can't tell where the land ends and the sky begins. They sort of merge together. So out we went, and we had to go back in through after we left Borkum at this end, we sailed along outside of Juist, and then we had to tuck in through this, what they call a gat between the two islands, and into a harbor here. The gats are interesting because there's a huge amount of water in here that flows in and out every 12 hours on the tidal cycle. So the water just tears out of here in all these gaps between the islands and then tears in at the other end of the tide. You can't fight it. So what you've got to do is end up right here at the right moment to be carried in on the current. And you can only leave at the right time to be carried out on the current.
Hmm.
They've all become holiday islands. They're virtually uninhabited in the winter, but in the summer they're a great holiday resort. But you can only get to them if you've got a flat bottom boat which can sit on the sand at low tide and then go on over in this inland sea, because you've never got enough time to get all the way on one tidal cycle. So you've got to be able to sit on the bottom at low tide and then carry on as the tide comes in again. Uh, but when you're in this, you're tucked in through there and coming in around the back, you've got seals sat on the sandbanks looking at you, and there's no end of fish and pools and bird life. That's why it's a World Heritage Site, because it is such a magnificent place. There's some interesting history too. Well, a very unusual bit of history as we went along. This island here, Longagug, in here, has got a statue on it. And there it is. That's a statue. This statue here has got a big backstory, and I'm not going to give the whole backstory. Let me see if I can log on here. Just a minute. We have to put up with these stupid ads on.
At Longhouse, we help businesses look great and get
I'll
seen
skip it as
with
soon as
Gemini
we
Live
can.
on the Samsung Galaxy at Fold 7.
David, we can't hear anything.
You can't hear it?
There.
By the
Now we
You can't
can.
hear it?
Yeah, we can. I remember the way you used to wait. Was there that you whispered tenderly that you loved me? You'd always be my lily of the light, my own Lily Marley. Time would come for roll call, time for us to part.
Trying to get out of this now.
Press you to my heart.
Come
There,
on.
neath that far off lantern light, I'd hold you.
How can I get out of it
We
just now?
kiss good night, my
Come
lily
on.
of the light, my own Lily Marley.
The background in this is, am I back there now? Yeah.
So we're looking at surprising history on Langley Goog.
Oh, yes. Okay. I've got to get back there because I'm not looking at that. Where is my screen? Ah, there we are. Okay. That was a huge song in the Second World War, but it was a German song. And it was broadcast in German for the German troops. It was became an iconic song for them. And it was broadcast at 10 o'clock every evening on the German Army network out of Belgrade. But the funny thing that happened was that the reception was excellent in North Africa, and all the 8th Army of the Allies in North Africa latched onto this song, and it became super popular. Both sides during the war tuned in at 10 o'clock to hear this song because it was sort of melancholy and that sort of thing. So the Germans woke up to this and they did an English language version, but they changed the words a bit to try and demoralize the troops. And they put in there like, yeah, time to leave your post and go home and stuff like that. So the British very quickly came up with their own version and had Marlene Dietrich sing it. And she changed the title to Marlene, Lily Marlene, because it was her name. And then Vera Lynn picked it up and it became the most popular song of the Second World War on both sides. And there's this statue to it. It's quite there's even more backstory to it, but I won't go there right now. On the last island, there was a bit of a problem because we didn't realize that the currents were against us and we were going to have trouble getting out to get over to the River Elbe, because you may remember that was a long haul. We made it in the end just to Cuxhaven, which is at the entrance of the River Elbe. It's an industrial port, but it's on that hard edge protected by dikes from the Wadden Sea and sandbanks, which are on the outside. And they've really exploited it for tourists because they're on the mainland. And you can ride on these horse-drawn wagons across the sand dunes at low tide. At high tide, this is all underwater. The other thing about Germany is you always know when you're in Germany because every beach has these wicker chairs on them. And you only see them in Germany, and I don't understand why they're not anywhere else, because they're very cozy. You rent them for the day, and you can turn them around, and they have a shade comes over the top. But they're very German. You see them everywhere and nowhere else. I don't quite understand that one. Anyway, from Cuxhaven, you can go on up the Elbe for another 70 kilometers to Hamburg, ends up in the big city of and port of Hamburg. We didn't go up there. We were going to turn off and go up to the Baltic, but I had very uncomfortable memories of Hamburg from years ago. And so we didn't go up to Hamburg this time. And let me explain why I had these uncomfortable memories. Back in 1956, I was cycling across Germany on my way to Norway and cycled through the center of, well, it's 1952, sorry. I was cycling through the center of Hamburg, and it looked like this. I had never seen such devastation. Just went for kilometers in every direction. And I had seen devastation in my hometown in England, but nothing on this scale. And I looked it up and discovered the firebombing of Hamburg that took place. And in 1 week, 38,000 people died and 180,000 were injured. Just in incessant bombing for a week, firebombing too. And it created a firestorm, which is like a stationary tornado, where you get so much heat that the air, all the oxygen is burned, and it pulls in air from around about that fuels the fire. Winds can get up to 250 kilometers an hour, and whole air raid shelters full of people died because they had no oxygen. The firestorm had taken all the oxygen. I was appalled because when I grew up in the war. I was too young to understand it, but I was old enough to remember things. And there were posters. You don't hate people naturally, so you have to teach your population to hate your enemy. So both sides had posters up to try and wind up your hatred of the other side. The one on the left was from the Allies side, and the one from the right was from the German side. The trouble is, you try to build up all this hatred, and it persists after the war is over. And in that trip, I found nothing but kindness and friendship, and I thought that was a miracle of forgiveness. And it really sort of changed my life a little bit after that. Anyway, so that was perhaps why Germany started to make a real impression on me so early in my life. I was back in Germany in 1973, and this time I was visiting Bonn. Here's Bonn on the River Rhine. It's down in the industrial heartland of Germany, just south of Cologne. I was there on a mission for the Canadian government, Department of National Defense. At that time, we now talked about West Germany and East Germany as two different countries because it was the height of the Cold War. The Berlin Wall was up, and it was a rather nasty time. The German army wanted a training base in Canada, in Shiloh, Manitoba. So I was sent over to do technical negotiations with the German army in Bonn. And I saw a different side of Germany. The Rhine Valley is very beautiful and very interesting, and that really influenced me. That's a more modern photograph. I don't think the high rises were there when I was there, but it's a totally different and beautiful part of the country. Oh, that was when I was there. I'm the one on the left-hand side looking very enigmatic.
Looking very handsome, David. Wow. Look at that black hair.
Yes, now it's all white, I'm afraid. But
But you
anyway,
still got it, so that's what we need to focus on.
the I found with this trip, I learned a lot about the German character that stuck with me ever since. And now when I go back, it tends to be reinforced. Um, I the Everything is rule driven. We went in there to try and work out the details of this training base, and they had stacks of books of rules. There were rules for the height of a coat hanger on a door, and
Wow.
um, they had rules for everything. And part of it was you should maintain your battle tanks on a concrete slab outside all year round with just a roof over it. I had a hell of a job persuading them that that wouldn't work in a Canadian winter. The technicians would freeze their fingers off. They couldn't do anything. Um, and I can always remember it because their response was, "We got to Moscow with those rules." And I didn't like to say, but you lost that point. Anyway, it was, but they were they were worked hard and they were meticulous and they were courteous and friendly. And it all worked out in the end because the Germans trained 140,000 troops over the years in Manitoba at that base at Shiloh. They finally closed it in 2000. But it also, and that business of wanting to have rules for everything, I noticed sort of persisted through everything in German life. They're much more comfortable if there's rules around and you know where you stand, sort of business. Yeah, I was going to say something else. Oh, yes, I found it a great dichotomy about the German culture in that they've got these magnificent artistic achievements, Beethoven and just no end of great composers and historians and scientists, and actually in between the wars, they were way ahead on scientific advancement and manufacturing. There were many areas which they were way ahead of the West on. And yet they sort of threw it all away in this military adventure. And the same before the First World War. It's strange. They've got so much ability, and yet there's this sort of self-destructive tendency. And I always used to think, oh, it could never happen to us. Now I look south of the border and I think, my God, you've got all this going for you, and there's some self-destruct mechanism that wants you to piss it all away. Anyway, I'm digressing. I shouldn't wander on like this. Let me.
I agree with that though, David. I think that's a good point to make. Because I think we forget how many great artists come from Germany and we focus on, one or two. I mean, I think we're all thinking, right? So you're right. It's kind of focused on that negativity versus all the greatness that comes out of Germany as well.
That's right. Yes. Now, I was so impressed with this new Germany that the following year, my wife and I went over with big yellow backpacks and explored the Rhine south of Bonn. And that's a very old picture. That's why it's yellow. But that's her stood by the Rhine River with her big yellow backpack um, uh, near Bingham on Rhine. We'll go down there a little bit. It fascinated me because this section of the Rhine has got castles all down the banks. People travel there to see the castles. And they're there because the Rhine River for 1,000 years has been the main trade artery in Europe. And Germany was all princely states, and each had their warlord. And they all wanted to extract Jews from the trade going up and down the river. So they built castles to control the river traffic and make you pay your dues as you travel down it. That's why there's so many castles and incredibly picturesque castles down this section of the Rhine. But what interested me particularly was this one up here is an old convent. It's not a castle. And it's a convent of someone called the Abbess Hildegard von Bingen. She lived from 1098 to 1179. And they still play her music today. She's actually the most played person of that era. And if you look her up on Wikipedia, you'll see that they say that perhaps she was the smartest person of the Middle Ages, but she was a woman, so she could only do it from inside a convent. And that's how she got away with it. I wanted to just quote a little bit from Wikipedia here while I'm here. She was a German Benedictine abbess and polymath, active as a writer, composer, philosopher, mystic, visionary, and as a medical writer and practitioner all through the High Middle Ages. She's one of the best-known composers of sacred music, as well as the most recorded in modern history. She's been considered by a number of scholars to be the founder of scientific natural history in Germany. And yet,
Wow.
you see, hardly anyone's heard of her.
Yeah.
Largely because she's a woman. And I thought I'd put that in because a lot of women have had a rotten end of the stick over the years.
That's right. We got to give credit where credit is due, ladies.
Yeah. Now, let's go. All this has been a bit of a digression. We are at Cuxhaven. We've ended that trip along the islands, the East Frisian Islands, and we've arrived at Cuxhaven, which is just down in the corner of this map, almost off the map in the bottom left-hand corner. And we want to get to the Baltic, which is up in the top right-hand corner. And there's a big canal that goes across Germany from Brundesbüttel here on the Elbe, right across the country and comes out here. The British call it the Kiel Canal because the city of Kiel is just around the corner up here. And that was an extremely interesting experience traveling down this Kiel Canal. It was, at the western end, there's 4 locks. And you can't really see the size of them in here, but there's 2 smaller ones, which were the original locks on this side, and 2 monstrous locks on this side. And these were built originally when the canal first opened in 1880. And these were opened for the beginning of the First World War, so the Kaiser could get his major battleships in and out. There's a whole backstory here about how the Germany, Prussia really in that time, decided that they were going to build a mighty navy. This was back in about 1870. And they did. They built a huge navy that became the second biggest in the world, rivaling the Royal Navy. It set off an arms race that led to the First World War, but that culminated in the First World War. And a key factor in that arms race was this Kiel Canal that they built across Germany in order to get their big battleships to the North Sea. Anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole because that'll take too long. But we came into this big lock, really overwhelming, because when the water's lower, the walls are so high, and it's very intimidating in a very small boat to come in through these big locks like that. But we just inside is a small marina for pleasure boats to wait. And we were tied up at this dock just in here. And these container ships are going right by. And this, I put this in because it gives you a feeling of how big they are compared to a little boat like ours, which is about the size of the one that you see in the foreground tied up here. You can't get right across this canal from one side to the other in one day, because pleasure boats are not allowed to sail after sunset and before sunrise, and there's a speed limit, and you're very much the junior partner amongst all these ships going across. So you pretty much are stuck with stopping somewhere on the way, and there's very few places to stop. But we figured that we could get to kilometer 82, I think it was, something like that, before it got too dark, and we'd have to tie up. So we set off full of enthusiasm, and we hadn't gone very far, and we were keeping close to the bank to keep out of the way of these big freighters. And then we went aground. Suddenly it was a big clunk, and we tipped sideways. We'd hit something. It didn't show up on the depth sounder, and we couldn't get off. I roared the engine back and forth, but not too far away. It was one of these trans-canal ferries that go back and forth across the canal, and he spotted that we were stuck, and he diverted, came across, threw a rope to us, and pulled us off, no problem, which was great. We were really worried because we thought if we stuck here for several hours, we're going to end up here in the dark with these huge ships going by us. That was another example of the kindness that we always experienced everywhere we went in Germany. I think we never had a negative experience. Now, where was I going from here? Yeah, so because luckily they pulled us off, we got to our destination for the night before darkness fell. And then I think we were getting a bit cocksure of ourselves because we left it late to carry on the next day. We thought, oh, we got lots of time before sunset to get through. But what we didn't realize was up at kilometer 86, the canal gets very narrow and there's only room for one freighter at a time. It's only wide enough for one freighter at a time to go through. And what you're seeing here from the aerial photographs is lines of piles down each side. And the idea is that these big ships may have to tie up to the piles and wait while some are coming the other way, or they hover in the channel like these two are doing there, waiting for someone to come from the other direction. Well, we didn't know anything about this. So we happily sailed by and we saw a yacht on the other side of these piles, just waiting. We didn't know why he was waiting, so we carried on. And we got to the narrowest part, which is just up round the corner. You can see it's getting narrower out here. And this bloody great freighter was coming the other way. It was a container ship. And like a small skyscraper moving along. We squeezed right in against the bank. And because the canal's narrow here, these huge ships push a huge body of water in front of them, a bow wave.
Oh my.
And so we went up, and when the wave passed, we were sucked down and out towards the side of the ship. It scared the pants off us, actually. But luckily, he pushed so much water away that we touched bottom as we were going out, and then slowed us down and we didn't hit the side of the ship. Happens again at the back end, but then you don't worry too much because you're swept out into the channel because he's gone by. But that was our big deal about the canal. Anyway, I'll carry on. Am I going too long?
No. I love it. That was a great story too, David.
Okay, so we ran a little bit late, and by the time we got to the other end of the canal, where the big locks are again, like the ones we came in at, it was dusk, but we thought we're in time. But they had big ships going through this lock, and they kept us waiting until the white light goes on that says you can come in. And what had happened is that they filled the lock up with these four big freighters, I think. The lock's that big. But there was a space left down the side for us to go in. And this photograph is taken in the daylight on the following day, but we were in a position of it being pitch black night, but huge floodlights all over the place. So you had pools of bright light with total darkness in between. Anyway, I think the space was narrower than this you're seeing in this picture, but we came in on the left-hand side and we had to tie up in the dark to that floating pontoon that I've put there. But now we had to pay our fees to get out for crossing the canal. So I had to get out in the dark, walk along that slimy pontoon until I could find a steel ladder let into the wall. And you can see there's one or two of them there. And this wall is about 10 meters high. I had to climb up that ladder, get myself over the edge because there was no railing at the top, and walk down over the gates to the center of the locks and find the office, pay the fees, come back, go down the ladder, back to the boat. I was shaking because I don't really have a head for heights like that. And it was so intimidating in the dark, and it's slimy, and there's this vast vessel on one side. That really shook me. I'm not going through there again in the dark, I'll tell you that. So we were in the Baltic now, and now we're going to go along the German Riviera. The German Riviera is their coast that goes between Poland. The Polish border is here on the right-hand side. And this is all Germany. We approached it from the north down there's a big city here called Rostock. And I'm jumping ahead here. Rostock. And we sailed along this coast here. Not much to see here, it's sandy, but nowhere where we could dock. And then there's a little dock up here, which we were heading for. And when we got there, we found it was abandoned, and we tried to sail in, and we went aground, even though all the markers were there. And it turned out that this used to be a border patrol port where they sent out all these patrol boats to try and stop people crossing from East Germany to Sweden, which is what you're seeing over here. Because the reason this has never been exploited and is off the radar is all this was East Germany, the German Democratic Republic, and it was totally sealed off from the West, so no Westerners could go there. And then the Berlin Wall came down, and the German Democratic Republic collapsed in 1990. But this was still way behind, and tourists, it just was not the infrastructure for tourists. And to this day, it's still sort of off the radar for people. Germans go there. There's lots of Germans going there, but it seems to be off the radar for cruise ships and that sort of stuff. And yet it's fabulous country through here. Anyway, we said the reason that was abandoned was there was a land dispute. The German Democratic Republic, if it wanted land, private ownership, they just took it. So they would seize your land and you were just out of luck. And then when it collapsed, all the landowners came back and wanted to get their land back. And so there's endless land disputes in East Germany. But anyway, that's not I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, just a minute. So there's a big island here of Rügen, which is quite significant. I put my mouse around it here. We didn't go to the main island immediately. We turned and came down through a channel here to the city of Stralsund. It was a beautiful medieval city. That was on my birthday. We stopped on one of the islands and sat on the beach all day in one of those wicker chairs. So I'll pass over that rather quickly. Stralsund was a beautiful city, but it got terribly bombed in the Second World War. And they haven't rebuilt all the buildings, but they rebuilt the facades and left the facades there so you can see what it was like, but It isn't anymore. And that was one of the grand buildings in Stralsund. It just makes me think that war is such a, well, never mind. I won't go off down that rabbit hole anyway. So, yes, okay. Now we're going to get to some more interesting stuff. After that, we went to the main island. The main island is Rügen, was the holiday spot of the Prussian kings. And it's the capital city on that island is still full of grand buildings from the golden age of Germany, you might say around the 1870s, 1890s. And all these grand buildings are there. It's a beautiful island, lots of sandy beaches and that sort of stuff. We went into the southern city because it was going to be our wedding anniversary the next day. And we thought, oh, we'll find a nice restaurant and celebrate. So we tied up, nice place, holiday type of marina, and we were walking around town to find a restaurant. And then June suddenly collapsed on the ground unconscious. And luckily there was an off-duty paramedic nearby, and he saw what happened, rushed over, and then it was sort of out of my hands because I didn't speak any German and no one spoke any English.
Oh, wow.
So and within a couple of minutes, an ambulance was there, and she was put in the back of the ambulance, and I was in the front. And we set off to the main city because that's the only place that has a hospital on the island. It's about half an hour's drive away. And there's me sat in the front with the driver, not knowing whether she's dead or alive in the back, and they're not saying anything to me. And then we're halfway there, and a car arrives in the other direction with flashing lights. And we both pull over to the side of the road. It turns out it's the emergency doctor from the hospital driving the other way to meet the ambulance. And I thought, oh my God, they all huddled in the back. And I thought, any moment now, they're going to come around and say she's dead. And, but they didn't. They didn't. They just drove on to the hospital. And she was in that hospital for 4 days, and they did every test known to man. It was a very modern hospital with superb services. And after 4 days, they said, well, we can't really find out why it happened. Off you go. So we picked her up, and that was the end of an incredibly stressful experience. But I put that in for 2 reasons. I wanted to say that I talk to a lot of people who get very fearful about their health or hospital if they're going to go traveling. And well, certainly in our traveling in Europe, we had to go to hospital in 6 different countries for various things. And we have found superb service, far better service than you get in Canada. There's no waiting around, very little waiting. The level of service when you're in is tremendous, and the technically, I think they're very good too. And as I said, we had that encounter in 6 different countries in Europe, always the same experience, and we never paid a penny. They never billed us for anything. And yet I hear people so worried about traveling and taking out health insurance and that sort of thing. I can see that for the United States. That's fine. But in Europe, we never had health insurance all the years we traveled. And I just come back 3 months ago from traveling in Europe through about 7 countries. And I don't have the health insurance. I think it's not worth it. They've got very good health coverage in every country. Anyway, I put that in for that reason. I don't want to labor the point. Let's move on. One other point, and I'll do this one and then I'll cut it off because I think I'm running out of time. But we went on towards the Polish border after that because June said, well, when my number's up, it's up, but we're going to live life to the full until it's there. So if it happens again and I'm not near someone, that'll be the end. But let's keep going and live life to the full. So that's what we did. But we came to a very interesting place down here. We were sailing past, this is an island. I don't know if you can see it that well here, but anyway, there's an island here, and we went down between the mainland and the island. And there were a couple of ruined bridges that had been bombed out in the Second World War that had never been repaired. And there was a reason for that. Right here on the bank next to us was a place called Peenemünde. And it was the German Army Research Center. And it was there that they developed the flying bomb, the V2 rocket, and they were working on a long-range rocket that could reach North America. It became the highest priority target in all of Germany for the Allies because they were racing to destroy it before they could launch their rockets. And in fact, this is where the space age started, because, let me go on. This is a German picture of the time with the launch of the first V2 rocket. And that is the start of the modern space age. It started right here.
Wow.
It's why the Allies were desperate to destroy this place. And all the brains from here were when Germany collapsed and this was overrun. The Americans went in and offered pardons and citizenship and a new life for all of those scientists, and they all went over and worked for NASA. And that's where NASA originated from Peenemünde, this little remote island off the north coast of Germany.
Oh my
I
goodness.
won't go down, I could go down that rabbit hole for hours, but I won't do that. And I've only got one more slide. And as we left Germany, we went by the island of Rügen, and there is a 4.5 kilometer apartment building of 10,000 apartments built by Hitler in 1937 on his for the Nazi faithful to have free holidays in the north of Germany.
Wow.
It's incredible. It's not used. It's now a bit of a museum because it's a Second World War Nazi holiday resort. And that was the last thing we saw when we left Germany on that day. But I think I've run out of time, so I must stop.
Oh my goodness, so David, okay, so I just want to quickly, I'm glad we ended on this because that's phenomenal to me. I had no idea that Hitler built these apartments for Nazis to go and take vacations at. That's incredible.
There's
My
all sorts of
goodness.
stuff like this. It's
How did we not, like, how did I not know that? You never hear that stuff. I wonder if anybody else has heard it, but that's incredible to me. It makes a lot of sense though, as well, right? Um, oh man, I think that was a wonderful trip through Germany, David. I loved it.
I don't know if you got any reaction from anyone, but it's
Yes, I actually seen some hands clapping when you before you were logging out of the PowerPoint there. So I'll just give another minute here if anybody has any comments or there's some thumbs up now, David. If anyone has any comments, any questions, so feel free. Now, Lori has typed in the chat and said, "Thank you so much, David. A very interesting part of Germany." And you're getting lots of hearts and thumbs up and claps. And so I will say quickly before we log off, everybody, that David did mention to me before this presentation, because this is his second installment. So his first one, he said, "Ugh, Sarah, I'm a little worried because it was kind of like I was just talking to myself. And I mean, maybe I was talking too much or was I going on too long?" I said, "David, we enjoy it." So, I mean, of course, I can only speak for myself, but it's super interesting. There's so much history. It's not just your travels, but it is, you've been there. You can speak to it. You can speak to your personal involvement in those countries and those cities. And you give us a little history lesson. I feel like I'm in like a social studies class. I I love it, David. And I really think that the people watching on the webinar love it as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here and they wouldn't come back and they wouldn't give you the claps and the thumbs up and the hearts that we do. So I can't speak for everybody, but I'm pretty sure that they all join me in thanking you so much for your wisdom. And Joy also typed in, "Thank you. It's a wonderful presentation." So. We're all invested, David. I know you feel like you're kind of talking to yourself. You might be talking too much, but we love it. I hesitate to chime in, but I just don't want you to feel like you're alone out there because we're here and we're invested.
well, we've got the Netherlands coming up, and then France, and then Spain, and we can go on and on.
That's right. We got lots coming up with David. So, everybody, if you don't mind, I know you will join me in giving a big round of applause to David. Even though you can only hear my claps, David, everybody's rooting for you. Thank you so much for being here today, David, and for educating us and telling us those wonderful stories. And everybody watching, come on back next week on the 11th. We're going to be joined by Odetta from the Better Business Bureau, as well as ATB. They're going to join in and talk to us about how you can protect yourself from financial fraud. So come on back next week. All the hearts, and I'm going to give you one of these. Only love. Thank you.
I remember.
Me and
Bye-bye.
David, we used to do this together, everybody. But that's for all of you. Come on back next week. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll see you soon, David. Thanks again. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.